This stuff here, Yerushalmi Eruvin, the article Oz V'Hadishon and Daf Lamed Ches Amrav, and we're going to be commencing Halacha Hey, which in the Vilna is on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, also commencing Halacha Hey. So the Mishnah says, Ir Rabim, you have a city of an individual, which became the city of the multitudes. The Yerushalmi Eruvin brings down the Mishnah Berurah's definition of this. It says that it's a city which is built by an individual for himself, and he rented it out to others, or he built it in order to settle residents there, and he left for himself pathways and highways and plazas, as kings do. I guess they retain, when they build a city, certain areas for their own jurisdiction. And some say they even made it to sell it to the masses, even though he didn't retain specific ownership, as long as the original owner's name is not forgotten from the city. That's still considered an ir shel yachid shenases shel rabim. Okay, so that Marvin is kula. Since it started out as in a city which belonged to an individual, you can make an erev throughout the entire city. But shel rabim, if a city of which belonged initially to the masses, and then it became somehow acquired by an individual. You can't make an erev in the entire city. Also, law unless you made for Kir Chadash Yehuda, like the new city Neustadt in Yehuda, Sheyesh B'Chamishim Duyurim, which had 50 residences which were excluded from the erev. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. No, all you need to exclude is 3 chatzeros of which each has at least 2 houses. Now, most of us interpret Yachid Rabim as an individual versus the mass, in other words, a city which is a private city versus a city which is a public city. So there's a sheet of Rashi in Eruvin Daf Nutes, which is brought down by Korban Eda, which is that Yerushalmi is a city where you have 600,000 people resident in the city or who go through the streets. But in any event, most of the interpretations of the Mishnah do not take the numbers into account, but rather the ownership and the structure of the city government, the city, how the city functions, as being the basis of our Mishnah's distinction between Shel Yachid and Shel Rabim. Okay, so says the Gemara, Tani b'shem Rabbi Yehuda, said Rabbi Yehuda, Eimar Me'oso Chatzon. So let's see Pnei Moshe on this, because I've underlined in my Gemara. Ir Shel Yachid v'Naseh Shel Rabim, Eimar Me'oso Chatzon. An ear which belonged to an individual and became then the jurisdiction of the masses. You don't make erev in halves. They can't make since initially was belonging to one person. The Hurgul Arab is cool name had where a custom make an erev throughout its entirety. You also echad to be one. Asmei Han and Hani they forbid each other. The Kimova echad as if it's one mavui. Remember which one of the chatzeros did not participate. Which forbids all the mavi to carry in the mavi. So you can build an eruv to exclude them, presumably, some way, shape, or form. But if they're not excluded, it's like a chatz in the mavi, where the asers on the mavi was included in the original eruv. So the Mechavish does Rabbi Yehuda. This seems to contradict Rabbi Yehuda also. The time you learned, Rabbi Chia said, "Ketzim Matirin Shusa Rabim." So let's see, pay much on this. Mechavish does the time Rabbi Chia Ma'aseh El Perakama Alocha Aleph. Ketzim Matirin Shusa Rabim Chulin Kavish Sham. V'asem Fulash Shusa Rabim. Come on, it's not time Shusa Rabim Mamish. It's about streets which open to Shusa Rabim. It says Rabbi Yehuda Lechi Okara Mikan Umikan. It says Lechi Okara on each side. So we've made each mavi into itself. Don't forbid one on the other. This is the picture. I'm not showing you a picture at this point, but Lechi on this side, Lechi on the other side. So the So that's the inside. The time of Bechir case material which is found by Bida Merlechi Mikan Velechi Mikan Velechi on each side. Matzim Mikor Mikan Kor on one each side. Charmim Lechi Bekor Kor Mikan. You need if it's a mavi maflush side, you need lechi and korah on one side, plus it's kind of sort of special on the other side. In any event, you can cut off a specific street through lechi and korah, 1.5 of the city. Here it says you can't cut it up. So it seems to be a contradiction. Says where you're right. It wasn't talking about where Rabbi Yehuda said you can't do it l'chatzoin. It's not about a city like ours. And we'll explain that in a minute. It's about it's not going to this a city, but rather in such a city. Even you have a large city like Antiochia. But it only has one door. You can make an erev on it. In this case, you can't make an erev in halves. Let's see Pnei Moshe again. Actually read it like this. Period. The be'ir sheyesh lo shnei pesachim. It's a city which has 2 openings. You can make an erev on half of it. Because these go out. The Pesach said on this door, and these go out that door. They remove themselves from each other. They don't forbid each other. So about this case, this case we speak about it. In the Brisa of Antiochia, even it's a large city like Antiochia, if it only has one door, one opening, from which the people exit the city, and that you make an erev in its entirety. You don't make an erev in halves. They became since they can't move themselves from each other because they all use the same opening. Because they only has one opening. When they if they made an erev in half, they were aser on each other because of their ultimately common usage to the main door, to the only door. Rabbi Yossi said, "Hadam Maraz." This teaches us, we by inference, that Bnei Movi shasa korasan. Bnei Movi put their korah. It says a Pesach, but the Reb Chaim changes it. I think it's obvious change. But Emtza Movi, if they put the korah in the middle of Movi, the Elu Mutarim ve'Elu Asurin. These are mutar and these are aser. So once in the inner part of the Movi, they're by themselves. They have a korah on their part of the Movi. They're okay. The ones on the outside, they're aser because there's drisas regel of the inner ones. It's on the outer ones. They will use ultimately that same opening. So therefore, the going through of the inner ones to the outer ones, asers on them. Okay, but at least since the outer ones are not allowed to carry anyway, they don't aser on the inner ones. But what about the nastu elu ve'elu? Did I read that correctly? Nastu elu ve'elu. Yeah. Now the outer part of the chitzonim, well, they made an attempt to be matir for themselves by putting up their own korah. So we have a korah in the middle of the Movi, a korah at the end of the Movi, lech in the middle of the Movi, lech at the end of the Movi. So in that case, the nastu elu ve'elu, elu ve'elu, they both become asur. In other words, since they're both allowed to use the Movi, and it's one Movi, even though they put the korah in the middle. So therefore, the asur of the outer ones were now allowed to carry, theoretically would be allowed to carry their area. Now, asur actually in the inner ones, because there's one structure which is artificially divided in two. Now, that's because, like I mentioned before in passing, it's because they put up a korah lechi in the middle of the Movi to divide it up. Where they put up an actual choice of Pesach, I don't think that's the case, because that's actually mechitza. But, and that erev would cut off the middle, the inner part of the Movi from the outer part of the Movi. But because they're using l'chayim or koros, which are not actual mechitzas, so therefore to artificially divide up without a true wall like it's Tzuras HaPesach, the inner part from the outer part, that the Gemara says doesn't work. That's like the city which has one opening in which the two halves of the city want artificially to try and separate from each other. Doesn't work. Ketzuosa, what do you do in such a situation in order to make it work, to be able to carry Shabbos? Now it's called Pesach HaMovi, Matas HaMovi. One Bukora at the opening of the Movi for the entire Movi, that's the only way that you're actually going to make it They're going to be able to make it, and it's just like being married the entire city as one unit. Similarly, if you have Chamisha Mavos Mavi, you have five, I guess, smaller Mavos opening to a major Mavi. Nasaglasim and Mavi, that they put the car in the middle of the Mavi. Elu Mutarim, Elu Aswin. Those are Bar Mutar, those are Bar Asar. Nasu Elu, Ve'elu, they both put up the Korah. Now, those on the inner part of Korah and the outer part of Korah. Elu Aswin, they're both Asar because it's the one larger Mavui. Cannot be artificially that way. Okay, so also what should you do? Noticing as a Korah Pesach Mavi, you put the Korah at the opening of the main Mavi. Matas Mavi, you permit the Mavi. And from this latter case, you see clearly the tikkun which Rabbi Chaim made before, when the name of the Rosh, made the name of the Rosh, was that it was obvious between Emtza and Pesach. Okay, the Chad Rabbi Pinchas Salach Lahacha. I guess a certain Rabbi Pinchas, the Permanent says Chad's man. It's interesting. Very much says the way it says in Agmara. Chad Sumri Abana Shmei Rabbi Pinchas. One time his name is Rabbi Pinchas. So the Karmei learns, well, Rabbi Pinchas must have been a famous person. So he says Chad's man Rabbi Pinchas. One time Rabbi Pinchas came here. Okay, so Chaz Pesach the Shakta the Shakta the Zuroi. You saw the opening of the marketplace of the Mohalim, the circumcisers. So this is Korban Eya explains how this is similar to the previous cases. Rav Pesach Shuk. You saw the opening marketplace Yoshim Mohalim, which the Mohalim would say Machas Akara B'Yoshim O Mevos Acheres Absuchas Mavi, and the other Mevos which are opening into the Mavi, and there was some sort of artificial division like the case before, where it was in a place where it was an artificial division, which was dividing like the middle of a Mavi, which was not going to work on account of the previous Gemara. Amalem Chilaktim Eruvchem Shavai Be'eruv. This way, it's not effective. And again, the question is, where do we have actually? So the Pesach would have worked. Evidently, here it was just a Korah of some sort. So, Yehuda said, no, l'chisuk batim naseis. Don't think this is actually a Korah. This is just made here in order to strengthen the houses. I guess it was a beam which was holding up walls on either side or something or another. But no, so we made an appropriate partial Eruv. This is just a random structure. Sometimes the structure is just a structure, not Eruv. I say to people, when I travel down the streets, I don't see telephone poles and wires. I see Eruvin. So he said, no, not every structure you see is an Eruv. Sometimes it's just a beam made to support the houses. Okay, it says the Gemara. Have actually a header in the Vilna in this case too. Ellen Kane also chutzlak ir chadash Yehuda. This he made outside. I love translating ir chadash as Neustadt. So that's really what it means. Unless it's you made outside of it something like what happened in the new city Yehuda. Kigon Snon v'chadasha migdal God. These is evidently circumstances this actually happened. Snon and chadasha and migdal God. I guess all different cities. So it's interesting. The Korban Eya seems to interpret that these are three cities where it was close together in close juxtaposition, and I guess they were excluded from each other. So you had by definition 50 diurim outside of them. It's not Chadash and Migdal God. The Reb Chaim brings down that actually this is a pasuk. It's interesting in the art scroll. It does not seem to appear in the in Torah Sholim. So therefore, just in the Shulus Chos, it says, Mikra hu b'Yoshua tezvav lamazayim b'arei matayuda tznon b'chadasha migdal God. So he explains that Ir Chadasha, which mentioned, is this city, or this conglomeration of cities. That's how Chaim explains it. Okay, so and the way the article elaborates, we're not talking about a city which is newly built now. There is a city which was, well, actually, it's not an ablation. I think it's a different interpretation, even though he says for Chaim. I don't think he's saying Reb Chaim. He says, he says he's saying Reb Chaim. It says that that it's not, the Ir Chadasha does not mean it's a new city which is built now, but that's its name. Like I said, like Neustadt, like the city which is mentioned in the Yoshua. It's non v'chadasha migdal God. So chadasha. Oh, maybe this is what that's what Chaim means, because we're chadasha. Okay. In other words, Ir Chadasha is the city called Chadasha, which appears in Yoshua. Interesting. So that would be the idea that it's not a new city. It was sometime Yoshua. It could be they read Megillah down at Tezvav. So, but it's new, not new. It's an old city mentioned already in Yoshua, but that was its name. Okay. So anyway, it doesn't sound that way from the word kagon in the Gemara. I don't know. Kagon sounds like it's talking like the Carbonator. That's a scenario. It could be it's based on Pasuk in Yoshua, but that they were three cities. Seems that the shot is that there were three cities which are in close proximity to each other, and each one was the shear for the other ones. In other words, each one was the 50 houses, which had to remain separate from the outside Eruv, because the Zir has Yerushalmi. Okay. Anyway, so Sheyesh, and that's what it says. Sheyesh ba, and it says Chamisha in the Vilna. It should be Chamishim, of course. Everybody changed it. Yesh Chamishim Diurim. So it could be that this is again a separate. In other words, there was a scenario in these three cities. Non Chadash Midah God. Each one had 50 houses, which is huge for the other ones, or it could be. It has to be Kohen Chaim. It's a separate statement. Sheyesh Chamishim Diurim. It said our Mishnah has 50 Diurim, and that the Gemara says I feel Nashim It doesn't have to be 50 inhabitants who are male Jews, but even men, women, and children. Asiyamar Vadisrael. They have to be Jews. As the residents for non-Jews, that doesn't count as an exclusion from the Eruv. The coming statement, the Rebbe and Memo, according to the Korban is going on the case of Rabbi Shimon, Shosh Chatzer, Shosh Shnei Batim, according to Pnei Moshe, and it seems the Pashup Shah is going on our case of the Chamishim Diurin. So Rebbe and Memo and Shim Bachir B'Shem Rav said, B'suchim M'soicha. So as Pnei Moshe says, Osa Shir Shechutzula, Tzarech Shir Diurin B'suchim T'achayir. In order to be actual Shir, there has to be a way in from that, from those houses, which are the shear, to the city itself. And the next statement, Amar Mona, it seems to be an explanation, not a question. According to Pnei Moshe, it's a question. Isn't it obvious what you're saying? So this is the import is the same, right? Either explanation or, yeah, obviously you're correct. But in any event, the question is how the inflection should be. It should be Amrei Money came and Shem Pesuchim L'Soich and Nasakim L'Kushus Chachas, since they all open to the same Rishus. Therefore, they're all like Rishus, and that's why it's about Shir. Is it not Amrei Money came and Shem Pesuchim L'Soich and Nasakim L'Kushus Chachas? Obviously, it's a Shir. So Rishus. So therefore, to leave them out is a blatant Shir. So according to that second interpretation, Pnei Moshe interpretations, he's adding. No, that's obvious. That clearly works. Even they're not open to the same city. Even it's the backside of those houses. They don't open to the city. They look like it's a completely different city. It's still good. It's still considered to be sheer, which would be very similar to what we said before about if we don't learn, it's a reference to the pasuk that Reb Chaim, it's non chadash and migdal God. 3 different cities. They can each be a sheer to each other. So let's read that in Pnei Moshe. It's obviously a shear. Even though they're not open to each other. That's the back side of those houses relative to the city. Also, a shear is considered to be a valid shear for the city. Halachavav. Misha b'mizrach. Somebody is on the east. V'amar libno la'arov la'marav. And he said to the son, make me an heir for the west. So he's, Beresh Chai has this picture here. No, page. Over here. You were over here on the east. Your house 2,000 amos away. And you told your son, you were standing here Erev Shabbos. Your Kodesh Shvisa here, evidently. And you told your son, make an heir to the west. And that was 3,000 amos away from where you are. So you can't get to the Erev. So you only mutter to get to your house. Not you can't get there. The Erev is ineffective for you because the Erev is more than 2,000 amos away from you. So you actually technically get to the Erev because your house will be your shvisa, but you can have 2,000 aside. But your Erev doesn't determine your shvisa. So that your as the Korban says, it came in Erev Havle Shvisa Lasa Beso She Betchum Beso Haya. Okay, so Misha b'mizrach Amar Ibno Larev L'Marav, or b'Marav Amar Ibno Larev L'Mizrach, or vice versa. Im Yesh Yimei L'Beso Payim Amo Leruva Yesim Mekan Muta L'Beso is submitted to his house. That's going to be Small Shvisa Asa Leruvo, and it's also the Erev. The Erev doesn't count for him. And then we have a converse case over here, which is where he's closer to the Erev than to his house. So the Erev is over there within 1,000 amos, and the house is 3,000 amos away. So, Erev Alpayim Amo Beso Yesim Mekan Muta Leruvav Asa Beso. Okay, this was the same scenario reversed. Hanos Erev Tchuma Shel Ir. Now you put your Erev in the Ibur. The Ibur is a 72/3 amos. So according to Rabbanan, you only get that area if you actually have a house there. You don't give an automatic Ibur to a city. So you put, according to Rabbanan, you have to put, with that case, you put your Erev inside a house, inside that area, and automatically your Erev was originally extended there regardless, because it's in 72/3 amos city, so therefore automatically extend there. According to Meir, it's even put it in the open field over here, because according to Meir, you always automatically give an Ibur to a city, even without a structure. So according to him, even you put your Erev anywhere in here, not necessarily in the house. Okay, so in any event, you didn't gain anything. So the loss of klum, because anyway, you would have gotten that extra area. But according to Rabbanan, because it was a house, or according to Meir, without the house. But you put it outside the tchum, which means not literally outside the tchum, but rather outside the Bura Shel Ir in this case. So whatever you gain now, the clock starts ticking. Whatever you gain on that side of the city, you lose on the other side of the city. Okay, because obviously once it's outside the 72/3 amos, so then your clock starts ticking, and you can make the cheshbon. The Mepharshim make the cheshbon. I don't think it's necessary for us to do that. If you put 1,000 amos away, you lose 1,000 on the other side. I guess I just didn't make the cheshbon. Whatever. Okay, says the Gemara. Min kashroi from the kasha, the maksha about kapara, which Bar Kapara asked. So we come to the conclusion that Mizrach beno Marav beno, Mizrach and Marav in the Mishnah can't mean literally east and west, but mean east and west of his son. How to so? So Nichoy Meshimeno Beso Alpaim Amo. This is really the question. I understand it between the case in that first line of the Mishnah, between him and his house, there's 2,000 amos, and there's Eruv Yosemikan, and there's Eruv more than that, Muta Beso Asa Eruva. Right, because that Erev was on, told his son to make on the west, and where am I here? Yeah, he told his son to make it on the west. He made it on the west, right? So that case works out fine. But the second case, it's again Nichem Yeshiv Beisel Alpayim Amo Eru Yesmikan Mutter Beisel, but they Ru Alpayim Amo Beisel Yesmikan. But this gets over here, right? How could he told us to make it on the west? What do you mean? The Eruv is on the east. It's on the same side where he is. It's just closer to him. So how did it work out? It's then he told us to make his Eruv on the west, right? It was on the west, right? So that's the grass. Leiru Apayim Amo Lebeisa Yesmikan Mutter Beisel Leiruva Beisel also doesn't work. So it must be that west doesn't mean west of his house, right? It means westly relative to his son's location. Okay, so his son was, I guess, over here with him. And he said to the son, go west, go west, young man, and make me Eruv over here. But after me, it was still to the east side of his house. And that's how he can only get to the Eruv, and he can't get to the to his own house. Okay, that brings us to the next Mishnah, to the end of the Gemara, and to the next Amud, so of course we'll stop here.